How do you stay ahead of competition?
That's very hard, really. It's cycling, right? You've got to keep training. You've got to keep training your staff. You've got to train yourself. You've got to do the best you can. And that's cycling. You could be in front and there's 10 people behind you. If you watch the races, they're all coming up on them. Yeah. So it is what it is. And you need those competitors, actually. They help. Khaled's always been like, yeah, let's get more people involved. The merrier, he says, because they will create a movement for the community. That if the government sees that there's lots of investment in cycling, if the government sees that there's lots of people supporting cycling, they will also, and there's more people cycling, so that I'm sure
there's always going to be more demand.
The rulers of Dubai have led this way. They made the cycle track. The rulers of Abu Dhabi led the way by creating the race team, by creating cycling tracks, by sponsoring teams, and now you see UAE team Emirates on the podium of the greatest races in the world because UAE is interested in promoting cycling. So now that the rulers are doing that and the other people follow suit, and the whole industry will grow. So there'll be more people entering it. There'll be more interest in the industry. There'll be more people entering the industry saying, you know what, I'd like to work in a bike shop. Probably not years ago, no one ever said that. So, you know what, I've been to that shop, it's really cool. I like that environment, that lifestyle of working in that environment. I don't want to work in an office. I want to work in a bike shop. It's very rare.
The future in our relationship as a society with AI will mean that some people will stop working. Some people will stop working and they will live on universal basic income. The people that will keep on working are the ones that, as AI becomes more and more relevant, they ride with AI. They learn how to ride AI. Like, I can run, I don't know, let's just say 10 kilometers an hour, and a horse can run 40 kilometers an hour. If I want to now run 40 kilometers an hour by myself, I can't. I have to learn how to ride the horse. You see what I mean? And if a car comes along and the car can go 400 kilometers an hour or 200 kilometers an hour, I have to leave the horse behind, learn how to ride the car.
Catch up with the technology.
You have to catch up with the technology and you have to ride the technology. Now, not everybody that is running is going to accept riding on a horse and they'll be left behind. Not everybody who's riding a horse will be willing to ride in a car and those people will be left behind, right? And that's just a part of life. So myself, yourself, the people who are listening that want to continue being relevant in the future absolutely must learn how to ride the horse.
I want to read the book.
He said, do not read the book called Mega Threats because AI is going to open an entirely new world of abundance and. Okay, fantastic. Between now, capitalism, and the new era, let's call it abundance, how exactly are we going to shift from the era of capitalism, which is what we've gotten used to an era of abundance? Because apparently in the era of abundance, we don't have jobs. So how do we go from having jobs to not having jobs? Like, explain that transition and explain to me that transition is not going to be painful for us living here today. So AI is going to be absolutely amazing for solving the world's biggest health problems, education problems, all of these problems. But the upheaval it will create for the people who don't take it seriously from now will also be a problem. Somebody once asked me, what's the biggest problem that you want AI to fix? This was another podcast. And I said, the biggest problem I want it to fix is the problem that it's going to create itself, which is the meaning of life. Like, once you take away human struggle, human work, the idea of, having challenges, like what stops somebody from doom scrolling on social media throughout the night? What stops them? It's not the need to sleep, because they can stay awake. They can just let their sleep fall apart. What stops them is the fact that they need to wake up in the morning and go to work. And if they don't, they'll be fired. And if they're fired, they can't pay for their office. Or pay for their home. So if your home is being paid for, what's to stop you from being lost in doom scrolling the whole night?
No, I've got ideas of where I want to take my business and my brand next year. But if we were to sit down 12 months from now, how exactly I'm going to take it there? I don't know. I've got an idea. So I would say, yeah, there's been many moments where I feel a bit stuck. But a coach once said to me, back into learning from others, and I've seen this and I've given this advice to my own clients, is you can't steer a car. And I love that analogy because you've just got to drive. And sometimes you might get to that roundabout and you go, do you know what? I'm going to turn right here. And then that doesn't work. But then you end up doing a few detours and then you get back onto the roundabout and do you know what? I learned quite a lot in that. But do you know what? That's not for me. So I think the biggest mistake in there is sitting in the car and not actually choosing to go in a direction. So that's where I think, I've got a clear idea of what my direction is, but do you know what? I might pivot slightly. Opportunity might happen. This might happen, but I've got really clear goals in what I want to achieve. How exactly I'm going to achieve those? It'll show up. I don't know. I really don't know.
To make its business work, the business fails. Simple, right? But when you focus is on the money, you forget everything else. So I think the thing is, remember the money needs to take care of itself, and the money will take care of itself if you do all the other things. And the things that
Money
are...
is the byproduct of great
money's
service
money's
and
the
great
outcome.
product.
Yeah, money's the outcome. I think the money will take care of itself. I think if you've got a strong set of values as an organization and you hire people based on those values with a desire to do good work, and they can make a connection between their strengths and the work that you're asking them to do, the money will take care of itself. It will.
So how do we...
My life took me to the point where I needed to get the knowledge, I needed to get the understanding, and I needed to fully embrace the topic of extra virgin olive oil. So at the age of over 40, I went back to school, the Olive Oil School of Spain, because that was the only institution that was offering a very full program, not just a 5-day sommelier course somewhere in Italy or Spain. However, this was a course that took me on a journey from how to grow olive trees, how to look after the olive groves, how to look after the soil, what pesticides there are, everything that is related to growing and looking after your olive oil tree, through then processing, manufacturing, storing, transporting, tasting, and understanding the chemical structure of extra virgin olive oil. So it was a very robust, very long course that got me the knowledge and that got me the expertise within the field.
Do you have a plan to start a...
Very quickly happen, wear it, get on with it, replace it, repair it, do whatever you have to do.
That's customer service.
It's customer service, and that lacks a lot in this market. So that stood us in good stead.
Customer service, being there for the customer, following up if there's any problem. This defines the values of the company and how the company values quality. And then no matter how much you charge me, I would love to come back. And
I remember the days I used to spend so many hours just training new staff, making sure, because when you're a sole entrepreneur, what happened, you did everything from scratch and you have a feeling that you know better than anyone else, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, and then what happens is that you find it very difficult to let go with things. The other problem, what happens is that you expect everyone to do as good as how you do it, and which will not happen most of the time. And that kinds of, especially if you're a control freak like me, sometimes it stresses you out. So it was a huge problem. So you read books, you go through so many things, and then you realize, it's not worth losing your sleep over this. As long as that person does at least 80% of what you expect, you just have to accept it.
because we're doing more business online nowadays, more calls.
Exactly, I mean, the world's changed, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this really, 3 of my books came during COVID, I wrote during COVID. And this was one that, it just seemed so obvious to write because we were all networking online. And it was interesting because I found people were, I mean, obviously the title speaks for itself. How often were you on Zoom and someone was speaking and you couldn't hear them and everyone's going, "You're on mute, mate." So that's where the name came from, obviously. But, people would spend a fortune watching the way they dressed, branding their websites, everything to do with the normal. And then they would turn up on a Zoom call in their pajamas, doing a professional call in front of their bed or with their laundry behind. And I'm thinking, hold on a second, we spent all this time putting on makeup, or maybe you do, I didn't. But, whatever it is, doing all these things. And then people were turning up like that. And I'm thinking, there's subconscious messaging going on here all the time. Your lighting's not good or your voice is bad. And yet in the real world, we worry about this, but not online. And then other things were starting to kick in as well, like the follow-up was bad, or people were turning up late for the Zoom calls or dropping off. And I'm just sitting there thinking, we're sending all these messages to people, but it doesn't matter because we're all on Zoom.
Yeah.
But it does matter. And that was what the book was, just to get people to think maybe a little bit.
So you have a great product, but if you don't know how to run a business, there's very little point in the impact that you're creating right now. The whole point of running a business is so you can leave a legacy.
If you have the best audience segmentation, the best list segmentation, the best research on who your audience is, you could throw almost anything at them, and you'll get some orders. Now, when you put the copy on steroids, once you have the the audience dialed in and your offer dialed in, then that, I call that direct marketing nirvana. It's like, you know, it's like the pinnacle, because then the creative is the most important. The copy is and that's what you found out, because you came from the media side, you came from the media buying side, and you knew how critical that was. But now when you put world-class copy and messaging to that research that you were doing so in, you know, in an excellent way, now you've got it's the three-legged stool of marketing. It's list, offer, creative, but the list is the most important. The list meaning that the media, the audience, and all of that. And that's just an important concept, which I stress in my book, because, you know, I think a lot of online marketers, because email is so cheap and Facebook advertising is cheap compared to what I did in the olden days called direct mail, which you pay postage and printing for, that I think the discipline that I learned in direct mail helps me in this way. And I teach that to my online marketers, because, you know, just because email is cheap doesn't mean you have to be sloppy.
My boss, he said one thing that always stuck to me, and he said, there will always be resistance when there's change made. And so, I mean, you know, clients may complain, but then they'll notice that, you know, what they have nowhere else to go, because what we're offering is really of quality, you know? And then if they leave, they'll come back, and some may leave, you know, and that's okay as well.
I almost wish for everyone to go through some tough times, because I think you will appreciate the other side better. There's yin and yang. I think there's light and day, and I think it's done like that. And I think you need to, same on the bike, if you only ride a bike easy, you will never feel how it feels if you really go deep and you really have to push hard. I think you feel different, and you will appreciate the climb. If the climb is really hard, you appreciate being on the top.
Entrepreneurship can be hard. It's oftentimes very lonely up here. You as a business owner wearing multiple hats, having to take decisions on the go. It is hard work. Any business is hard work. And it becomes very important then to have some kind of a support, whether you join a community or a networking group, or you have mentors and coaches, or listen to these podcasts.